The Triads, the Yardies, the Colombian Cartel, the Diablos, the Leone family, all trapped fighting for power within the bustling Liberty City. Both the gangs and Liberty City would become the template that every sandbox game post-2001 would follow. Grand Theft Auto 3 creating a sandbox you inhabit as a lone wolf rather than creating a level-by-level campaign that you follow a checklist that the developer restricts you to. A city where there's living systems that you take part in, a world that makes you believe in it even when you aren't playing a mission, or even missions where you can approach the objective however you want. That's GTA 3. That's Liberty City. To understand the creation of this amazing sandbox, the creation of the open world genre, and to answer today's question on whether Grand Theft Auto 3 is underrated or overrated, first, to understand all of it, we need to know the roots of Grand Theft Auto 3. The history of it, and the influence it had on the entire gaming industry. You may not know everything about the history of Rockstar, and that's okay. I'm here to give you a brief overview and then get into the thick of it. The main transition that is the most important to note in 2001 for Rockstar North, who are the original creators for Grand Theft Auto by the way, is that when they were converting the Liberty City environment that was featured in Grand Theft Auto 1 to 3D, to fight with the obstacle of transitioning to 3D, they received multiple new head producers. The director of development for every 3D Grand Theft Auto game before the HD era had their introduction with Grand Theft Auto 4 was Jamie King, who was one of the original Rockstar co-founders by the way, but he received a promotion from producer to director of development after Grand Theft Auto 2. Another man that was brought on board was Leslie Benzies, who was the head producer of Grand Theft Auto 3 and continued this position until Grand Theft Auto 5. Jamie left Rockstar in 2006, and Leslie left Rockstar in 2016 over disputes regarding the online for Grand Theft Auto 5, but at the time of GTA 3, he and Jamie were considered assets of the utmost importance. These are the two guys who helped forge the 3D sandbox, alongside with Dan Houser's script for GTA 3 and Sam Houser's guidance as executive producer and head co-founder. The Houser brothers who founded this thing from the beginning. Put yourself into Rockstar's shoes in the year 1999, coming off the heels of releasing GTA 2, and now trying to convert this franchise to the 3D era. Creating a 3D world that the player can inhabit like they could in the 2D games, but this time you'd have to dial the immersive aspects of the city to 11 because everything had to be more detailed. There's tons of similarities to Grand Theft Auto 2 and 1 that can be felt in GTA 3, but it is groundbreaking the amount of work they put into separating the third installment from the previous two. Formatting the first open world through a massive sandbox you can explore on your spare time, being able to kill whomever you want, drive wherever you want, participate in minigames around the city, and have day and night cycles. Plenty of games were considered open world before Grand Theft Auto 3. Some MMORPGs, there was Legend of Zelda, Grand Theft Auto 1 or 2, or Warcraft to name a few. But as we move into the 3D world, there's only 3 games that could compete for the first 3D open world sandbox game. Those are Shenmue, Super Mario 64, and Ocarina of Time. Now these games have elements that inspired Grand Theft Auto 3, but Grand Theft Auto 3 had fully explorable interior environments with barely any loading screens in the game outside of cutscenes. Any NPC was shootable on sight. Every car drivable. You could get into car chases in the middle of the city, get into police chases, get into even tanks chasing you down the road. It's a 3D shooting and driving game told from the cinematic lens of its cutscenes. Minigames that flooded the city with immersiveness, and all of this in an interactable sandbox that boasted freedom as its #1 attribute, with being able to handle plenty of missions with the level of player freedom that is unseen even in newer GTA games. Many would say that Driver 2 is the first 3D open world sandbox driving game, but Driver 2, in terms of interactability with the city outside of your car though, it was the bare minimum. Grand Theft Auto 3 took everything these predecessors did, changed the game with its 3D sandbox interactable environment, creating the 2000s open world genre that would be mimicked throughout the next 20 years. Now don't get me wrong, Driver 2 and all these other games deserve some appreciation too. In fact, a lot of them deserve a ton. But I do believe there is a reason that to this day a game like Watch Dogs gets called a GTA clone. Grand Theft Auto 3 started that. and it started so much of what we love about the open world genre, especially the city sandbox open world genre to this day. And to clarify, I ain't gonna say city sandbox 3D open world hubbubaloo genre every time I talk about this, so I'm trimming it down to just open world for the remainder of the video. You could make a 5-hour video alone just on Grand Theft Auto 3's design choices and their cut content. I am not here to make a video on that, but I am here to talk about these design choices briefly to give us some context when we're talking about whether or not if GTA 3 is overrated or underrated or even still a good game in the year of our Lord 2024. Dan Houser describes the original GTA in an interview with Electric Playground as a byproduct of watching way too many action movies, and that's why they chose the perspective of a police helicopter when you're playing the game. Hence the top-down design for GTA 1, which was also due to the limitations of 5th gen hardware, don't get me wrong. But now, in the 3D world of GTA 3, they had the capabilities to be the byproduct of watching way too many films, such as the obvious nods to Goodfellas, or in the game it's called Badfellas. Now that game could allow for that sense of immersion that GTA 1 and 2 didn't have. You could personally have a close connection to your avatar in-game and live out those action movie fantasies, but without the gaminess of the 2D helicopter POV. This replicating of an action movie. The replicating can only go so far in the story mode though. The storyline will end. How do we make the player feel like they are in their own movie without being on a mission? While revolutionary for the time, having a world that was reactive to you was the answer that Rockstar was looking for. Cops who would react to you just for bumping into other cars, cops who could have you arrested, being able to drive to a gun shop and purchase new weapons, purchase new body armor, and allowing them to do whatever their hearts desire as an action movie star in this living city. Have real world effects from the story, the characters that you work with when they switch locations, so does the mission start points. The bombing of the bridge in the beginning isn't ignored but has to get resolved midway through the story to show the evolution within the city. The reactive world, gang members shooting you for recognizing you, their vehicles being able to provide you access to specific gang-owned venues, and being able to drive, boat ride, or even fly the shitty dodo bird plane whenever and wherever you want. Escapism, but it's escapism that you unleash into a living real world rather than a gamey one. A gamey world would just brush off everything in the story. It would force you to go mission by mission, but not provide you with the interactive city in between these story bits. And nothing, I mean nothing, would react to your actions. It's so much in one game that I'll just let Leslie Benzies describe to you in an interview from Bedroom to Billions, the documentary, what this game means.
If you could do anything you wanted to do tonight, what would you do? I'd shoot my boss, I'd drive a fast car, and so I think that's part of what made GTA successful. It was giving people the ability to realize their fantasies.
That's it. It's this. It's being an action hero, it's being a paramedic, it's being a taxi driver, being a vigilante, being the main character Claude on the main missions, or even being a psychopath. It all works due to the amount of detail that was invested into Liberty City to make it feel like a real reactive world that you could just escape in and do whatever you want. Now, there's still plenty of video gamey elements to GTA 3, but it feels like it's all in service to creating an emphasis on escapism. But escapism, like the story, can only get you so far until the immersion is broken. A glitch, the game ends, there's no interactability, there's invisible walls. Whatever it is, the immersion eventually breaks. Grand Theft Auto 3 corrected so many of these potential problems by not even bothering with them in the first place. There's barely any invisible walls, there's beating the game, but the world is so habitable that you could play dozens of hours longer doing whatever you want without getting bored. And the whole world is interactive. Now, we will go over not all of this has aged well, by the way, but my point is that they went far above the bare minimum, which was just a shooting and driving in a bare-bones city video game. That's what GTA 3 could have been. A game like Driver 2 feels like the world is an accessory to the main story. GTA 3 feels like the main story is an accessory to the city. Liberty City, the sandbox, is the entire game. And it's the part that Rockstar North put the most effort into by going far above the Call of Duty for the first open world video game ever. The development of Grand Theft Auto 3 was as ambitious as you could imagine, but Rockstar has always been committed to outdoing their previous entries rather than replicating their success. GTA 1 and 2 show this, and Grand Theft Auto 3, while having homages to the originals with the same helicopter POV and the camera settings, or even the telephone side missions, which were some of the main ways to access story missions from its predecessors. The game is not about dwelling on these imitations though, but instead it's about evolving rather than just replicating. Many modern franchises are about returning to the roots, replicating the past, and Rockstar nearly dodges this trope every chance they get because not many of their fans scream about returning to form. Every game has a distinct tone, personality, world, characters, and environments, so there's no return to form. The only return to form would be focusing less on creating a live service element for their games like Grand Theft Auto 5 and Red Dead Online and focusing more on single player. That is the only return to form element for Rockstar, or just revisiting old franchises, I guess? But those two things aren't even related to the single player storylines, the characters, or the world that surrounds the story, because there is no return to form for Rockstar in regards to character, world, and story. And that's because they've never relied on replicating the past in the first place. Grand Theft Auto 3 followed a path of dodging tropes such as imitating the greats or copycatting the past, which games like Halo Infinite live off of nowadays. No offense to that game. Rockstar shows every evolutionary step they take with each game in their catalog, but even just a simple glance at the scripts will prove that to you, which only get bigger and bigger. I mean, look at the GTA 3 script compared to the GTA 4 script in this picture found on Rockstar's official Q&A for GTA 3. That is all the proof you need. The fact that this was a constantly evolving franchise caused Grand Theft Auto 3 to even struggle when deciding on a style. This is noted in the same Q&A where they discuss the different styles being chosen for GTA 3, with some even looking far cartoonier, which would have matched the look of GTA 1 and 2. But ultimately, they opted out for a more grounded, dark, and nasty look to represent the way Liberty City actually feels. Mimicking that real world, not the futuristic one of GTA 2 or the cartoony one of GTA 1. And what a way to sidestep in a new direction that can mimic the tone of the films that GTA 3 is inspired off of, evolving the property and never replicating the past. What a way to do that. And while everyone was working on making the first driving and shooting game, which was the terminology used, by the way, before open world became the verbiage, the struggles were endless with this conversion to 3D, but one struggle that many view as very simple nowadays is Claude being a mute. Many have voiced criticism of Grand Theft Auto 3 for having a crappy story and Claude being a boring character because he's a silent protagonist. This was not far-fetched in 2001, and I'm going to point out that making games in 2001 where you were trying to make an action movie, you were trying to make yourself an action star, it was actually quite common to have a silent protagonist. Master Chief, Gordon Freeman, Link, Doom Guy, and Isaac Clarke from the original Dead Space all fulfill this archetype. These are iconic, beloved characters, and they can be interesting in their own ways even without having a major voice or any voice at all. And I know Master Chief talks, but you know what I mean. Claude was not only a liability that would have taken too much time to create a voice for, especially because the audio department at Rockstar was already filled to the brim with sound effects for every little thing in this world. A car alone has 6 different sound effects, from the horn to crashing to doors opening to closing to windows breaking to blowing up, and if you include service vehicles, there's sirens as well. That is just one single car. So Claude was not high on the priority list, and once again, most of Rockstar's efforts were going into the world. They wanted it to feel immersive, and I think that everyone just agreed that silent protagonists were common and that Claude didn't have to have a voice. It was a cost-benefit analysis that in retrospect many will criticize, but to be honest, Claude is such a run-of-the-mill character that why would you even care if he has a voice? He just wants revenge on a girl who betrayed him and is willing to fuck over everyone on Earth to make that happen. Hearing him talk would do nothing. The other struggles ranged from adding more subtleties to this interactable world with the radio stations, which Terry Donovan, the co-founder and head of marketing, chose the music for, while also collaborating with Dan Houser's radio station scripts that he received help with from Laszlo Jones, who was with the series all the way up until GTA 5. You guys know Laszlo, it's this fucker right here. He's in every GTA game from 2001 onward. You can tell there's so many struggles converting this series to 3D, with not just the development, but also how much cut content there is. You can fill a book, a lot of books, with the amount of cut content in GTA 3. Like, Grand Theft Auto 3 may be complimented for how much is in the game. It may be complimented for being the first open world game, the first interactable open world. It was the first game that was identified by purely the engagement of the player in the world's minigames, its NPCs, and its sandbox freedom. But it did have a hell of a lot of missing cut content. Let's discuss the cut content that was featured in later GTA titles, and then the cut content myths that people still believe to this day, by the way. After that, we're gonna move into our critiques and positives of GTA 3. Modern Grand Theft Auto games, though, have two features that many could never see GTA 6 coming without. One is the first-person mode that originally premiered with GTA 5 on Xbox One and PS4 consoles, and the other is GTA Online. Both of these were originally planned to be in GTA 3, but were canceled due to time constraints, which is odd because Game Informer had revealed how far into development the first-person perspective was for GTA 3. Now, don't get me wrong, it was probably still time constraints that caused this to get canceled, but it's interesting that they dropped all these assets for it so late into development. The second piece, which I feel like a lot of people would want me to have a ton of in-depth information about, was GTA Online, which was the official name of it even back when GTA 3 was in development. I'll be honest though, there's just not a lot of information regarding GTA Online before it hit GTA 5. On the wiki, they mentioned there was some game modes such as Deathmatch, Team Deathmatch, something called Deathmatch Stealth, which possibly implied secretly killing your opponents. There was Rat Race, which was a racing mode, probably, Capture the Flag, Domination, and Stash the Cash, which was probably a game mode where whomever had the most cash at the end would win. Think Plunder from Call of Duty. You could also customize your online character based on data found in GTA 3 source files, where they had files called player settings or player race, which implies being able to customize these features. There was also satchel charges and a variety of melee weapons that would later be featured in GTA titles. My personal favorite piece of cut content, though, is actually the physical cover of GTA 3, which was originally going to be this. This ended up being just the European cover of the game, but if they did not change this in the US last minute, post 9/11, within a month of release, we might have never gotten or received the iconic look of GTA covers that they have stuck with every entry after 2001. There's common myths everywhere that started sprouting up post 9/11 of stuff they changed from the game. That the dodo bird plane that is so difficult to fly was originally meant to be flown, but after 9/11 had its wings clipped by developers. This has been proven to be false due to old documents of game development for GTA 3 mentioning that the plane was never supposed to be flyable. School buses were also shown in the alpha for GTA 3, but they were removed way before 9/11 happened, which was a whole other myth that this was just a reaction to 9/11. According to Rockstar, though, only around 1% of the game was actually changed post 9/11, which that means that only 1% of the game was changed during the delay period that prevented GTA 3 from coming out on October 3rd, 2001, and instead moved its release to October 22nd, 2001. Approximately 3 weeks later. Grand Theft Auto 3 only changed 4 things post 9/11, and there could be more to this, but these are the 4 things that have been confirmed, not just from stupid speculation on the internet. Flight paths were changed so planes never looked like they were mimicking hitting skyscrapers. The physical US cover for GTA 3 was now changed and made into the iconic GTA cover that we see for every game since. Some dialogue in the radio stations referencing political parties and terrorism was taken out, and the police cars' color schemes were changed to not mimic the NYPD, but instead just have a completely different color palette. The idea that the game was completely altered within 3 weeks after 9/11 was just a myth, and these myths were only exaggerated by the game's popularity post-launch. There's a ghost town found out of bounds that many thought was supposed to be more of the Liberty City map, but it was actually just used to film the intro cinematic. It was very hard to create in-game cinematics that weren't pre-rendered, so this was their way of making that opening cinematic look so damn good. There was also a homeless NPC named Dark Hell that has become somewhat infamous in the GTA community for being removed from the game, and a lot of people thought he was removed post 9/11. Many think he was removed for giving you missions that revolved around like shooting kids or to commit a terrorist act, but this is all completely false. He was just a homeless guy who gave you cool items for doing random missions. He might have been taken out due to possible controversy surrounding his missions, but it had nothing to do with 9/11. Rockstar claims he was taken out for not fitting in with the game's vibe, which kind of makes sense considering that the game is heavily focused on rival gang families within Liberty City, so some random homeless guy would be a bit of a strange addition. One thing that is true though is that after 9/11, Dan Houser has confirmed that the studio contemplated scrapping the entire game due to its violent nature. He makes statements about how the most tragic thing to ever happen to New York City occurs, and we are about to release a game that capitalizes off of violence in the same city. It just didn't feel right to him. And I agree with his sentiment, and I think his heart is in the right place, but it would have been such a shame to throw away such a piece of art that has become one of the most influential video games ever created, even if it were out of respect for a tragedy. It's a work of art, it's not a promoter of violence, and I am happy they told themselves that while they were altering just a little bit of the game to be respectful to the recent tragedy. Good for them. So finally, after deciding to officially delay it to October 22nd, 2001, and after the E3 in 2001, which surprisingly had very little excitement for the video game, it released, and it released to massive critical acclaim and sales growing as time went on due to the quality and influence that this title had. Word of mouth that made the sales grow to the point of 14.5 million copies, and it was the best-selling game of 2001 behind Pokemon Gold, Silver, Crystal. Nothing's ever gonna beat a fucking Pokemon game, is it? GTA 3 went on to become regarded as one of the best and most important video games ever created by many critics and people who grew up with it. It was a game that threw Rockstar into the spotlight, and going into the 2010s, it was still regarded as one of the most important video games ever made, and is still regarded as one of the best video games ever made. It still has that status. To someone who's playing it for the first time in 2024 though, it's regarded as aged milk, overly frustrating, annoying, tedious, and overall some think it's a legit piece of shit. These massive risks that were needed for the video game industry, but we'll see later on in the game's lifespan that those risks have some detrimental repercussions. So acknowledging everything that was said, is there merit to someone who thinks this game is a piece of shit? Well, let's look at the complaints, shall we? Grand Theft Auto 3 is so widely beloved, being considered one of the most important video games ever created, but it has been shadowed by every successor to come out since. People look back on it shaming it for not including the speaking protagonist, claiming that it has outdated controls, shitty driving mechanics, and it is just too damn hard. Let's talk about that first complaint. Claude. The silent protagonist. He doesn't have the charisma of Tommy Vercetti or the iconic element to him that CJ has, with such a defined character that has over 7,000 lines of dialogue according to the wiki. Claude has no lines. And I'll be the first to say that Grand Theft Auto 3 has the worst story by a mile in comparison to any other GTA that has come out after. You cannot play this game and walk away saying, wow, what an amazing story. It's basically impossible. GTA 4 would be about an immigrant who is searching for the American dream but realizes that it doesn't exist. It's a lie. That's such an interesting story for a criminal. It's sympathetic. Claude doesn't have any of that. All we know about Claude is that he was a bank robber, he's betrayed by his girlfriend during his most recent heist, Claude is arrested, and he must work his way up with the help of his friend 8-Ball, who gets him a starting job with a crime boss named Luigi for the Leone family, one of the many gangs of Liberty City. Claude just does not speak, and it seems that his only motivation, his only goal is to befriend whoever will give him resources to help him get revenge. He'll betray whomever gets in his way that's no use to him anymore, and then do whatever he can to get revenge on his former lover named Catalina, who is now a leader of the Colombian cartel. Revenge, that's all he cares about. Grand Theft Auto 3 was never about the story though. As we already discussed earlier with the difficulties on development, the focus was on the sandbox. You can criticize the story, I mean I'll agree, Claude is basically the most disloyal person on planet Earth. He leaves the Leone family when they try to kill him, he leaves Maria, he leaves the Yakuza, he leaves the government guy who's been using him as well, he rejoins the Yakuza, and then he leaves them again at the very end whenever they're all killed. He's just a drifter. He just drifts and goes from group to group. He goes with the flow to get his revenge. The story and the characters are as stereotypical and as simple gets. Claude works his way up after being arrested, escaping a prison van after a bridge is blown up by the cartel, which by the way is never really acknowledged as to why that happens. Claude starts working with the Leone family, who are at war with another gang called the Triads because they are selling a new drug called Spank. Claude gets to know a nice girl named Maria, and the Leone family is going to betray Claude to make peace with the Triads after Claude's done multiple hit jobs against the Triads for them at this point. The Triads want him dead, and the Leone family is totally willing to throw Claude underneath the bus if it means making peace. Maria saves Claude though because she views him as a good guy, and she guides Claude to work for her friend who's with the Yakuza gang, who is slowly taking over Liberty City after being at war with the biggest gang in the whole city, which is the Colombian cartel. You work for the Yakuza for a while until a government guy named Donald Love tells you to start killing off Yakuza members without letting them know it was you, even though you just got done working for them. And then finally, once Donald Love leaves the picture, you start working for the Yakuza again. But then the Catalina girl who betrayed you in the beginning is now head of the Colombian cartel, and she executes everyone in the Yakuza. She also kidnaps Maria, the girl who flirted with you for 5 seconds and saved your life earlier. So now Claude is gonna become the good guy. He's gonna do the right thing. You go to pay the ransom to let Maria go, but it leads to a shootout where you kill everyone, including Catalina. You save Maria, and you walk away with a happy ending. But to emphasize how disloyal Claude is, Maria starts complaining about her makeup and her hair getting ruined, and Claude just shoots her as the game's credits roll. I'm not joking, Claude literally just fucking shoots her.
My hair is ruined. I mean, can you believe it? This one cost me $50.
Claude is a fucking psychopath. This game does not have a well-written story. It has a well-written world, and it is an immersive one at that, but the story is not even on par with other stories from 2001, such as Halo 1, Silent Hill 2, or Metal Gear Solid 2. So people who say they don't play GTA 3 because the story is bad, and therefore it's a bad game, if that's what you want from GTA 3, then you aren't going to be satisfied. But GTA 3 is not about the storyline. It is about the open world sandbox. The main character is Liberty City, and Claude is just an avatar for the player to inhabit this city. People think it was such a simple decision to make him a silent protagonist and how dumb it was that they chose that, but it really wasn't that simple. It was so commonplace to have a silent protagonist and was often seen as a positive thing due to players wanting an avatar that they could play out their deepest desires through. Exactly what Leslie Bency said earlier was the point of Grand Theft Auto 3. I believe for Grand Theft Auto 3, the complaint of a mediocre story is valid, but I don't agree with dissing Claude for being a mute. A common complaint with Rockstar games nowadays is the cognitive dissonance of every character. I'll explain this. It's been brought up in a ton of videos, most notably Nakey Jakey's critiques of Rockstar Studios, but I don't want to repeat everything he has already said. The idea of Rockstar games is that you're meant to sympathize with Nico Bellic, you are meant to sympathize with Arthur Morgan, John Marston, Michael DeSanta, but each one of these characters you run around just blatantly murdering people left and right. How am I supposed to feel bad for a character who says, wow, wow, I struggle with my own morality. And then right afterwards, I go gambling, lose, and then blow everyone's head off who beat me at poker. Mitty could respond, well, don't do that. But let me ask you, so you want me to be a law-abiding citizen in a game called Grand Theft Auto? No. I'm not gonna do that. That's half of the enjoyment, is just to break the law. GTA 5's answer to this was Trevor, who is so psychotic that if the player ever does want to remain in character but also go on a killing spree, he can just switch to Trevor and never break character, never experience that cognitive dissonance. This is where Claude comes in. Claude is so disloyal. He obviously just wants one thing: revenge. There's nothing to be sympathetic for, and he's not complex enough to even have dialogue, so therefore, no dialogue equals no cognitive dissonance. He is an avatar for the player. His only goal is revenge, and he doesn't give a shit about anyone. Running around as Claude and just murdering people doesn't even feel out of character because there is barely a character to begin with. When Leslie Benzies talked earlier about how the point of GTA 3 was escapism, the feeling of wanting to kill your boss, run over people, or rob a bank, that feeling cannot be fully realized with a well-written, self-destructive but complex character. It can be realized through a silent protagonist though, and it can be realized through Claude because doing those activities never ruins the story or the character, ever. The story would need to be entirely reworked to make Claude function as a voiced protagonist, and I'm sorry to anyone who hates the game for the story, but I strongly recommend playing the game without the expectation of a great story like GTA San Andreas 4 or Red Dead. Play the game for the purpose of escapism in the city, the crazy minigames that exaggerate Liberty City's liveliness, and the multiple ways to approach some missions in the sandbox. Moving on to another complaint with the original GTA 3 is that it did not have an in-game map. That's right, no pausing and looking at your map, no creating waypoints, and no icons to really tell you where some of the necessity places are like ammunition or pay and spray. You have to memorize these locations, or you guys know how every GTA game came with a massive physical map of the city? That map now had a use outside of being hung up on a wall as a decoration. You actually had to look back and forth between your game and that physical map to learn where locations are. That sounds crazy from a 2024 gaming perspective, but when GTA 3 came out, you had to consistently look back and forth between your game and the real physical map until you would know the entirety of Liberty City by heart. I feel like they discussed having an in-game map, but felt it would be more immersive to have the player look at a real-life map. I think that was probably the argument. And Grand Theft Auto 3 was always trying to find ways around every corner that would allow for the player to feel as if Liberty City can transcend beyond the typical hub world, transcend beyond a video game. They wanted to feel real, and I think part of that was the real life map they gave you.
But I mean, look at this fucking thing. You would have to go to the circles. You would only see a general area of where everything was. You would never see a specific location. You would have to go to the index and match the number from the index with the number in the circle. And there was some positives, but this is just a super funky looking map.
The positive to this map was that you really did memorize everything. You would know Liberty City better than any other person out there because you memorized it. You don't need any icon to tell you how to get to ammunition. You don't need any icon to tell you how to get to pay and spray. But from a modern 2024 gaming perspective, this is nightmarish. We will discuss this more when comparing the definitive edition versus the original, but the idea of expecting someone to own one of these maps or to have it up on their phone while playing, constantly glancing over to it, and then trying to memorize the map, it just takes too damn long. It's just like that just takes forever. You would have to play through the game a couple of times before you feel comfortable enough saying where you are and knowing where to drive. And luckily the game gives you an objective marker on your mini-map whenever you have a mission, because without that the game would literally be unplayable. Some missions are astronomically harder if you do not know where certain places are, and the fact that you already have to pause your game to look at this map in the first place, to look at this physical map, does not make my immersion any better. I love the fact that all these games came with maps, but if you already have to pause your game to look at the map in the first place, then just fucking put the map in front of me on the pause menu. Nobody can say this would take too much development either, because they already made the damn thing physically. It's just not in game, and it's just instead it's on an actual piece of paper. I will give a defensive point for the map in my review section, but I just mention all this because I do sympathize with all the people who hate that feature so much. The whole map missing thing can cause a difficulty rise, which is funny because another common complaint with modern audiences about GTA 3 is that the game is just too hard. I have seen this from countless forums and Steam reviews online. And I will say that sometimes difficulty matters, and we can all agree that older games tend to be harder than newer games, and that's fine. Grand Theft Auto 3 is no exception to that rule. With no checkpoints, you die, you go back to the hospital, and you start the whole mission all over again. Newer games like Grand Theft Auto 5 will allow checkpoints, which I believe is a step in the right direction, but sometimes the idea of hand-holding through difficulty can go just a bit too far, like letting people skip a mission because they died 3 times on it, which is something that Grand Theft Auto 5 does do. This just seems to me like a way to be able to get away with lazy game design because someone can just skip a mission if they don't like it and they don't actually have to acknowledge the bad game design. It just feels lazy. It's like that shitty crane mission. I could literally just die 3 times in a row and just skip it because of how bad that mission is in GTA 5. Grand Theft Auto 3 is the opposite of this problem. It could have used checkpoints in one way or another, but this is not the broken difficulty problem. We'll get to the checkpoint problem eventually. This just makes the game harder, but the difficulty that does matter to me, matter to my soul, is the broken difficulty sections or the downright awful mechanics that are in specific parts of the game. You can't snipe everybody on the boat for the 8-ball mission, especially on PC, because the mouse and keyboard controls just suck. The bank heist mission where you're supposed to find a paint spray when being chased by the cops, but there's no map, so it's impossible unless you constantly pause the game, look at the physical map, or go on your phone. How fast cars explode when you get shot at too? Oh my gosh, if a gang starts shooting at your car, you're done for. You'll just instantly die. These are broken difficulty hurdles that I agree with the community on, who shout that this is an overrated and outdated game. Because these broken difficulty hurdles are not systems like no checkpoints that are put in place to add a sense of challenge and intensity to every single mission, but these are systems that are broken at times, and more broken in 2001, by the way. We might have forgiven them back then because of the influence and non-conventional approach that Grand Theft Auto 3 had to everything. I mean, it quite literally changed the open world game. Going off of difficulty still, the cop AI basically flying at your vehicle at Mach speed when your wanted level is above 3 stars. Dying immediately if you attempt to swim rather than just spawning you back to the nearest surface, or having Claude not be some swimless freak. The timed missions that you will never beat on your first try and will have to repeatedly do, which is just trial and error until you have memorized the locations that you have to go to for a timed mission. While also keep in mind for a timed mission, making sure that you have a fast enough car to finish the mission in time, because most cars probably won't do it for you. The AI doesn't do the difficulty any favors either, with people like 8-Ball on the ship mission who are just willingly killing themselves immediately if you don't kill everyone on the ship within 10 to 15 seconds. These are some very basic examples, but this is the difficulty that I empathize with the people who dislike this game on. I have beaten the game 3 times on 3 different devices, so if anyone can empathize with modern gamers on this, it's me. You cannot just blindly love a game. Well, you can, but you need to acknowledge the faults as well, and not just think people are babies who can't beat GTA 3. Speaking of babies, time for a sponsorship. I am still a baby on YouTube. I don't have a subscriber count to have a sponsorship, so I am here calling all of you appreciators out there to subscribe and like this video. I have been trying to beat the shit out of the algorithm like Claude the fucking psychopath beats the shit out of every innocent human that gets in his way. We are working our way through every Rockstar game ever made, with GTA 1 and 2 finished and the Midnight Club series finished. Up next will be Grand Theft Auto Vice City, so be prepared. Claude, what do you think of Vice City? Cool. Great insight. Tell me if you agree with people who say GTA 3 is overrated or outdated before we decide by the ending of this video. And please, appreciators, as always, keep it civil. Come on, these are just video games. We can all remain civil about it. It's just art we all care about, and that's the important part. We care about it. The one thing I cannot remain civil about, though, is the driving mechanics in this game, which is the next most critiqued mechanic from the community that claims this game is overrated and outdated. We have established this as the first driving and shooting-esque game that was ever created and made the open world genre. That being said, if you drive a small enough car, you will flip over just by hitting a tiny little curb. If this shit happened to me in real life, I would have been dead 10 years ago when I got my license. On top of that, your car will just set on fire after just a few bullets hitting it, and don't even get me started on the crashing, which is just a case-by-case basis. Occasionally you get hit by a cop car and you'll immediately be caught on fire, or it'll do absolutely no damage. It's like a 50-50 fucking lottery. And try switching vehicles in a shootout or a cop chase as well. It's unlikely to happen. You'll probably end up getting run over by multiple cars before ever being able to switch a vehicle. The driving is just not very good. It's not unplayable, and I will get into the good part about it into my review, but the collision physics just feel busted, with your car either flipping over entirely due to a small curb, or your car getting hit by a tank without moving a freaking inch. I will say, no matter what car you drive though, preferably not a fast small one, it always feels like the cops have a cheat code activated that allows them to drive just as fast as you, and that's even if you're in a super fast sports car like the Inferno. They'll just come flying across the screen at you whenever you're 3 stars or higher. We all know I'm okay with a hard game. I love the later Midnight Club entries. I'm a big Dark Souls fan. I throw myself on the hardest difficulty whenever I start a new game on anything. But GTA 3 doesn't have that typical hard level of difficulty. It literally just doesn't feel play tested in so many areas. The timed missions are hit or miss so badly. Like either they give you ample amount of time to complete an objective or giving you less than 10 seconds worth of wiggle room. This can be difficult when you don't even know the exact location of the objective because the original game doesn't really have a GPS, but it just relies on you finding a path through guessing exactly where the objective is through the tiny purple marker on your minimap. Or sometimes there's no purple marker at all and they just say go out and find this stuff within a timed interval, which is ridiculous. Occasionally there's other bullshit like the vague descriptors on how to beat a mission, like the throwing grenade through a window mission, which I swear to God, this might be the worst GTA mission I have ever played, which is astonishing because it legit is probably 3 minutes long if you do it right. First off, oh my God, you were supposed to throw a grenade through this person's window. Easy, right? Nope, shut up. You have no grenade arc, and it can be extremely hard to determine where to throw this grenade to get it through the window. So I'll be chucking this shit at a wall for 30 minutes, and if you miss the window, oh no, the grenade is gonna bounce off the wall and probably hit you in the fucking face and kill you. Oh no, whoa, so much fun. You might think, well, you should be able to tell when you're close enough to the wall or how far you are to be able to throw this grenade through the window. Well, the grenades are so tiny and they blend in with the black wall behind them that you can't even tell where the hell this thing is once it bounces off the wall. It would be like me smashing your mom's face with an iron skillet and asking you to identify where I hit her, but the fact of the matter is that she's so fucking ugly that you wouldn't be able to tell. I'm sorry. I lost my cool. I'm sorry. That was too far. So now you're playing hot potato with a grenade, praying that you get it into the window, and now you've got it, finally. End of the mission, right? Nope, you're wrong. So now the guy who owns the apartment is running away and he is already in his car and you are not in a car. Of course you're not. So now you gotta chase him, which this becomes an entirely little difficult challenge they throw in your way. Now they just throw a little curveball in your way because every cop in God's shittiest city is chasing you with their cheat codes activated, smashing you off the road. Oh, so veteran players are probably in the comments typing. They're probably going, why don't you just block the alleyway with cars so he can't escape? Oh, true. Let me fucking try that. Why didn't I think of that on my first playthrough? Set up a Jenga tower with some cars in an alleyway. Except this man has superpowers and pushes the car out of the way like it's a shopping cart in the middle of the soda aisle. So now I have to grab an 18-wheeler instead of a nerf-for-nothing car, block the alley, spam the guy with grenades as soon as he comes out of the garage after losing half my health to grenades bouncing off the wall that didn't go through his freaking window to begin with. He comes out of the garage, he gets hit by all these grenades, and you want to know the worst part is that if you played the original version of GTA 3, every time you'd spawn back in, you'd have to go to ammunition, pick up all your equipment again, pick up all those grenades again, and pick up all that body armor again, and you would have to do that again, every freaking time. Now, if you're a veteran to GTA 3, they'd be like, oh, well, it isn't that bad. It isn't that bad. Please, I beg of you, you gatekeeping son of a bitch, sympathize with how it feels to be a new player to this game. Remember the first time you ever played this game. Please, I beg of you. Did your friend have to show you what to do? Did your older brother? Did you have to watch a walkthrough? Or in my case, did you have to play it 100 times before beating it because I'm too fucking stubborn to go on the internet to look something up? You can still love it. That is fine. And you can say it gets easier the more you play it, which I would actually agree with, by the way, with somebody who's beaten GTA 3 3 times before making this video. But I also remain very self-aware that new players who are entering this sandbox, they have to go through so many hardships that come with it. Because the insane part is, this is not the most hated mission of the game. This mission is one I personally despise, but there's plenty of people who got through it on their first try, and then there's some people who they just have other missions they hate for their own reasons. Believe me when I say that everyone who's ever played this game has a mission they can say that some insane bullshit happened on during their first playthrough, or even subsequent playthroughs. I guarantee you there's plenty of times where you've been like, oh, let me revisit GTA 3. I'm just gonna play through it really quickly, and then you just get stuck on one mission for an hour because of some stupid crap. The memorization of the map, the cop AI, the driving mechanics, the no map being included in the in-game original game, the easily destroyed vehicles, the extreme missions that will range from timed to the point of impossibility or not timed, but they're just rough missions to do. Some of these complaints do stick around though, even for that remastered version, for that definitive version, but most of these outdated features have been acknowledged, and I already know what some of you think when you go on a platform like Steam and see the reviews for GTA 3 being mixed. Well, of course, that's because the definitive version sucks, and this isn't the original. And you're right. Kinda. The original GTA 3 sits at very positive reviews, with most people referencing the nostalgia they have for it or talking about how amazing it is to revisit this classic, which implies to me that most of the positive reviews are done by people who already previously had played the game. But GTA 3 Definitive Edition sits at mixed reviews, with people either saying that the Definitive Edition sucks and that you should just play the original, or it's probably around 20 to 25% of people who actually just think GTA 3 is a bad game with outdated mechanics. And then the positive reviews tend to be people who actually just like the things that the Definitive Edition updated, and I kinda sit somewhere in the middle on this. But before I talk about the Definitive Edition, I want to make it clear that I played it on PS5, not PC. I also want to reference that plenty of people mention that GTA 3 with mods makes it a great game, the original one by the way, because of all the quality of life improvements that you can get with mods in 2024. Whereas people also say that adding graphics and technical mods to the Definitive Edition makes the base game a bad game because it should already have all this stuff included. It's kind of a weird standpoint to have, and while the argument could be made that the Definitive Edition shouldn't need mods because it's newer, it's a remaster, I would make the argument that no game should need mods to be good to begin with. The remaster does add a lot of elements from those GTA 3 mods that makes it so that means that the newer version has a lot of quality of life fixes. Most games I do play though, I play the vanilla versions first. In GTA 3, the frame rate system on the PC version is horrendous, making the main menus go at a slug's pace at times. And if you turn off the frame limiter, be prepared to deal with glitches and bugs up the wazoo, especially with driving. Those are just my two biggest complaints with the PC version of GTA 3, and I know that those are not in the console version. I only bring them up because that was my experience. But also, let me acknowledge all of the experience and a bunch of the complaints that people have regarding the definitive edition before diving into my own experience with it. People tend to dislike the Rockstar launcher, the forced online mode, the price of the whole package, the lighting not being correct, the view distance not being correct, the character models looking kinda weird at times in each game, the technical bugs, and glitches. Those last two, by the way, are the heaviest complaints, the visuals and the technical bugs. Now, I want to acknowledge those before moving forward, and you will know exactly why. Because what am I angry about? What do I not like about the definitive edition? Well, there's one big thing that I will discuss later, but for right now, I'm just gonna talk about the criminal price tag, $60. This is not worth $60 whatsoever. I also hate that they require you to be online with the Rockstar launcher, and I hate the high toll it has on your PC, even for such an old game, at least from what I've heard on the internet. I did not have this problem with my PS5. And the biggest thing that bothers me the most, this is always going to get to me, it's the delisting of the original game. But now, all of this is out of the way. I will say the definitive edition is not as bad as what people say in its current state. On console, yes, some of the graphics are rough, specifically character models, but some of it, especially building remodels, the textures put in here, and plenty of the redone lighting is very impressive while still maintaining that PS2 era look to it. I didn't experience a single bug in my whole playthrough, and I did everything. I did the telephone missions, I did every main mission. It just wasn't that bad of an experience for me, but I don't want to discount all of your experiences with the PC version specifically. I also don't mind a lot of the graphics. I think some of the character models are a little funky, and I never had a problem with any of the technical bugs outside of probably a few repeats of musical cues, which could be an audio glitch, to be honest. I was kind of happy with it, and overall I had a pretty solid experience on it, but this could be the difference between the console version and the PC version in 2024, because I know plenty of people who still hate this remaster, and I will defend that it should not be worth $60. That's just bullshit. And I also don't want people's negative experience to be discarded because my experience was okay. Rockstar's bullshit needs to be called out, regardless of just if one person, myself, may have had a fun time while others did not. The behaviors of Rockstar still should always be called out. This is going to be the most controversial part of this video, but in general, this video is going to be piss off so many people because part of it I am complimenting the hell out of GTA 3, and the whole other part of it I'm shitting on the game, so everyone is going to be mad here. GTA 3 is just that high up in terms of polarization and influence that no matter who you are, I probably said something that you agree with, and I probably said something that you disagree with. But hey, I just want to be transparent and honest. Graphical issues that everyone yells about are barely noticeable unless you're a big fan of the original game. The definitive edition is not supposed to look like a new game. It is supposed to look like a PS2 game with smoothed out textures, and sometimes that can look a little bit strange, especially in the character models. But there's also higher resolution and higher frame rate that doesn't make the game have a million bugs like the original does on Steam. There's probably a mod to fix that, but I just want base games to be good like that, and I know a 2001 game isn't gonna do that. The console version of the original also has less bugs than the PC version, so I would like to note that here. I briefly played the PS2 one, and I can confidently say that all my issues I described earlier with the frame rate limited and the menu are not present in the original console variant. But if you're not going for that nostalgic feel or for that very authentic original game feeling, then the definitive edition is made for you, because if you're new to the 3D era of GTA 3 in particular must be played on the definitive version. And if you really are that picky about the small graphical details, then go play the Netflix phone version, which ironed out a lot of these problems a really long time ago. I bought a Backbone controller online specifically to play GTA 3 on my phone. It ironed out so many of the problems that Rockstar has had, and the only problem I ever encountered was texture pop-in, which was just a little bit frustrating on my iPhone 13 Pro Max. I played both, but the comparisons I am showing you right here of the first mission in the game are not a deal breaker for me to have a preference with my PS5 copy. I only bring it up though just in case somebody is really picky about the small graphical details. I hear ya. This is why I'm recommending this copy as well. My grievances are towards them delisting the original game in particular, because that's us getting closer and closer to the extinction of the original GTA 3 from legal availability. The ridiculous price tag of $60 for 3 games that are ancient at this point is also part of the problem, and the character models do kind of look AI upscaled. There's some prettier environments and there's some quality of life fixes, which is the best part about this bundle, by the way, but I still support the people who are calling out the graphical issues even if they don't matter to me as much. I just don't think it should be shunned if somebody prefers to play these versions in 2024, because they are updated versions of the original games, especially with the quality of life stuff. They are enhanced versions in a lot of ways. And if the PC version is really that bad, that's a whole other topic. I know it's worse than the console ones, but if you're new to these, a lot of those outdated complaints from earlier have been acknowledged, and I would recommend getting this version on console at a major discount of $30 or less, or better yet, buy it used online so Rockstar doesn't get a dime out of you. They added a map in-game for GTA 3, which is huge. They added a fully functional GPS, location icons, so now you actually know how to get to ammunition and pay and spray. They added auto-saving through the cloud, new aiming that more closely matches San Andreas rather than modern GTA games like 4 or 5, which, by the way, this is further proof that the game was not meant to feel like a modern game. They are just updating a 6th generation console game. But there was also another update, which is probably the most controversial of the non-graphical updates to the bunch, and that is the added checkpoint system. Now let's go way back to a point I made earlier, which would be sympathizing with a new player to GTA 3, someone who has never played it. This version is a must for them. It makes time missions more bearable due to the new GPS system. Some of the busted feeling missions that required you memorizing the map, like the bank heist mission, where if you didn't know where a pay and spray was, you'd have no idea what to do. You'd be running from the cops for hours or trying to pause and pull out your map and do all this other mumbo jumbo. This version of the game has a GPS marker for the pay and spray, and you can just go straight to it instead of going through endless loops trying to find bribe tokens to lower your wanted level. There is also another mission though called Grand Theft Auto with a ridiculous timer to collect a bunch of sports cars, and it's made significantly easier because of the new GPS and the new map. There's some stuff they didn't change, like whenever you have to find a yardie car or a cartel car for a mission, you had to totally ask a friend or look up on the internet which car was owned by a specific gang, especially because the Bobcat truck and the cartel truck look nearly identical on the surface. This is just dumb, and probably should have been worked on in a game that's trying to appeal to newcomers to the 3D era of GTA. This should have been improved, because God knows how many people have grabbed a Bobcat thinking it was a cartel truck. Some missions are just as hard as they always were, but now, when you respawn from a mission that you lose to some bullshit, it's not at the hospital that you respawn where you have to go and collect your body armor and your weapons all over again. The checkpoint system is the way GTA 4 does its checkpoint system. This means that when you lose, you can just restart at the beginning of the mission, but you will never get a checkpoint during the mission. I cannot explain how far this is up there with the included map as quality of life choices. The way the original game worked, yes, it added intensity that you would spawn at the hospital, but the only thing it ever did was force you to go back over and pick up all your crap from ammunition, pick up all your crap all over again, grab the fast car before showing up to the mission site, and that was just all annoying. This new checkpoint system, in quotation marks, was made to bypass the tedious bullshit that you had to do after respawning. Oh, I failed a mission. Time to go back to ammunition, recollect all my guns, the body armor, time for me to go get the fast car again for this timed mission so I can beat it in the ridiculous amount of time that they're asking me to. This new checkpoint system isn't really about difficulty, and it isn't even really a checkpoint. It just allows you to restart the mission immediately rather than spawning and doing all the tedious bullshit you did before starting the mission all over again. I don't think the original system was necessarily broken, but it was tedious. And once again, I sympathize with new players, because does that really sound fun to you? It's not a difficulty issue. It's an issue that revolves around tedium and boredom. The definitive editions also updated the drive-by shooting. They updated the driving for GTA 3 to make it significantly less bouncy, and I know some vanilla players hate that, but I like it. I get that people just want a vanilla version of GTA 3 with a graphical facelift, but the problem is that no new gamer would want to play that. Just go mod the original for that. And I do sympathize with the fact that they delisted that. That's ridiculous. These already mixed reviews, though, are people just taking out their anger on Rockstar, and rightfully so, especially for that delisting. But most of it is either just that or people who legitimately don't like the original GTA 3. They don't like the way the game plays. And I want players to be able to go out of their way to play GTA 3, but this is probably the only way they're gonna do that is with this updated version. Updating a game enough to make people interested, because I'm sorry, there was no map on the Steam version of the original game or on the console version, and I don't have dual monitors. I literally went to eBay and ordered a complete inbox version of the original game so I could have a map for my playthrough. How many newer gamers are actually gonna want to do that shit just to be able to play GTA 3? They'll either mod it or just play the definitive edition. The definitive edition is by far going to be the most accessible way to play this game, even with all of its shortcomings. They updated the weapons by adding the slow-mo weapon wheel from GTA 5, which in my personal opinion, this is a little bit too modernized for my taste, but I know most people are not gonna care. Probably a lot of people will like it. Most of the changes for the definitive edition feel like things that other PS2 games had at the time, but weapon wheels feel like a very post-2010 thing, so this kind of bugs me a little bit. But like other things that feel very similar to PS2 era GTA is that they altered the wanted level in GTA 3 to be similar to Vice City, where it blinks for a little bit of time and allows you to be on your best behavior so you don't get any stars for crushing someone on the sidewalk. There's many more changes, but that's just some of the major ones that they did. I do wish vanilla GTA 3 was still available, and I've said that a million times, but I'm trying to emphasize it because it really does piss me off. I love the original GTA 3, but I also play a lot of old games, and I would be lying if I didn't say that I had a sigh of relief when I pulled up the definitive edition and I saw some of the quality of life improvements like the map being included in game. But this also is going to tie to my biggest issue with the definitive edition from the start. It feels like the trilogy doesn't know if it wanted to appeal to older fans by giving them the original games but with a small graphical facelift with some updated quality of life choices, or if it was trying to give newer gamers an accessible way to play these 3D GTA games. It's the most accessible way to play GTA 3 for sure, but there's still so many fucking problems with these missions to the point to where all those areas that I said feel not even play tested in the original game still don't feel play tested. The timed missions have not been improved really at all with the exception of the GPS being added, but it's just so dumb because nobody got fully what they wanted. Old fans did not get fully what they wanted, and new people, newcomers, did not get fully something they would enjoy as well. So is it just there to appeal to older fans then? No. The game also changes way too much for older fans to be happy with it. The graphics have taken no priority from Rockstar, which shows that they don't care to make the older fans happy whatsoever. But yet, they could make just some minor changes to make older fans happy. It's like view distance, lighting, some character models, all this stuff. Rockstar also made it very clear when developing all three of these games that GTA 3 was the most difficult to update because of all of its assets and mechanics being so incredibly outdated in comparison to Vice City and San Andreas. But when we look at the player base for the definitive edition though, it makes sense to me why someone who's new to this game would prefer to play the definitive edition. But it also makes sense to me why a veteran GTA player would rather play the original GTA 3. It's riding a line, dude. And I've been riding a line this whole time going back and forth, but I wish I could just sit here and say the definitive edition sucks, the original is the way to go, or say only play the definitive edition, the original is unplayable. But like I said earlier, GTA 3 is the most love-hate relationship I have ever had with a game. And for all you, I just want to be honest with you. I know my preference is going to be to play the definitive edition due to the map being included and the new checkpoint system that I believe throws out the majority of tedium that I experienced with the original Grand Theft Auto 3. GTA 3 is a tough ass game to get through on a first playthrough. It's frustrating. It has miles of bullshit over its incredible sandbox, but if you know how to navigate through all that bullshit, then all you see is that incredible sandbox. My second playthrough of GTA 3 was immensely better than my first, and that's because I could navigate through all the bullshit and I just saw the game for the incredible influence it was and for that amazing world of Liberty City. I know there's plenty of people who will comment to people who are frustrated at a mission on GTA 3 and say, well, just do X, Y, and Z, but let's all remember, it is a frustrating game, no matter how freedom driven it is, and no matter how amazingly influential it was on gaming. And for anyone who just thinks GTA 3 is bad, remember, dude, this is the game that created the open world genre. It was one of the biggest games when it released. Let's all remember the grenade hit. I can't believe I wrote that. Let's all remember the grenade mission, which will go down in history as the most aggravating thing I've ever done in my life. Or the mission when you had to shoot down the plane from the boat, but the mission objective is that you shoot it down, you collect a bunch of bags from the blown up crash, and then you have 5 to 6 star cops chasing after you, which is near impossible to get through at the time, so it's just the most obnoxious thing ever. Or the mission where, in the original game, where you had to drive Ray to the airport, and you have to find another way to get him there besides the bridges, because there's FIB all over the bridges. But back in the day, you'd be pulling out the map, staring at that whole thing, trying to find some way to get him across to the other island without using a bridge. I didn't even know the way, so I ended up just driving through the subway before even realizing there was another way to get off the island, which, given, this flexes how amazing the sandbox is. There is multiple ways to get off an island. This does flex that, but it also shows off how fucking clueless first-time runners are in this game. How clueless you can be, especially playing the original game for the first time. It's a game that has so many ways to approach every mission. Like the plane mission earlier, you could just drive to the airport and shoot the plane before it like flies off, which is incredible. That's amazing that you can do that. There are so many ways to approach every mission, and that just shows how incredible it is. But it's also a game where when you play it for the first time, you don't even understand what the fuck to do for half the missions. It's a frustrating game, but underneath all that frustration is also a game that went beyond expectations in 2001 in every possible way, being the first open world game. That's right, and I'm here to sum up my love and hate relationship with this game. I've gone over all the pros, I've gone over some of the development, I've gone over a bunch of the complaints that a lot of people have. Now it's a time to give my own personal input, which I've given a little bit of. I've occasionally dropped in how I feel about certain things, but we're gonna do a little bit of a deep dive. This right here sums up my love-hate relationship with GTA 3.
Oh my god, okay, cool, the cast guy came out, the cast guy's out. Alright, let me shoot at him. And are you fucking kidding me? Bullets don't penetrate him? Bullets don't penetrate a fucking... Okay, time to try out something. Okay, let's try that one more time. That did a little bit more than the bullets. Okay, nope, alright, now I'm busted. Alright, cool. Is this working? Is this working? I'm glad no man inside a cast is more powerful than a fucking iron tank. Okay, great, I'm gonna die. Alright, that's it. That's game. Alright, I'm dead. Wait, what? Yes! I love this fucking game so goddamn much.
Now on to that same love-hate relationship, but in review format. My first experience playing Grand Theft Auto was Grand Theft Auto Vice City and San Andreas, which I would sneak from my older brother's room and play on my spare time. I remember being in his bedroom, staring at his wall and seeing a woman in a bikini and being like, whoa, boobies. Then realizing at the age of 16 that it was just the poster of GTA Vice City. My first experience though with GTA 3 was the original version on Steam. My second playthrough was on console with the PS5 definitive version, and my third playthrough was on my phone with the Netflix definitive version with the backbone that I ordered. I have 100%ed the game outside of its collectibles and delivering the cars to the port. I've done everything, all the telephone missions, the main game missions, plenty of the taxi, ambulance, vigilante, and firefighter missions I also completed. There's a mission early on where a mob boss wants you to pick up a bunch of his street girls all across the city, and you can just pick up a charter bus and pick them all up rather than having to do 4 at a time per car. You can pick every single one of them up and drop them all off at the same time. This is the type of variety this game has. The complaints that I have with GTA 3, which match the outdated qualities, are the missing map, the driving, the aiming, the waiting for NPCs to be available at specific times of the day, the cop system, but I like to say I normally enjoy playing games from the lens of when they came out, and that's where my love of GTA 3 shines. I have such an admiration for this game and the developers, and it's by far the most ballsy and ambitious Rockstar game ever created. I don't care what anyone says about Red Dead 2, Red Dead 1, GTA San Andreas, whatever. This is their most ambitious game, in my opinion, honestly, by a mile. Grand Theft Auto 3 to me is not one of the greatest games ever made, even if you took out all the outdated shit. There's still plenty of stuff that pisses me off, like the driving mechanics. But Grand Theft Auto 3 is sure as hell one of the most important video games ever made, and that cannot be understated. We've seen it be an influential icon, and Grand Theft Auto again and again and again has revolutionized how every open world game is going to be for the next decade. Grand Theft Auto 3, though, was no exception, and in fact is probably the most revolutionary out of all of them. No, actually it is. I'm not even going to say probably for that. I just want to talk about the small details I noticed when playing this game. This is 2001, and Rockstar did not need to go this hard. Like Claude shutting the door when his car is halfway down the road while racing from the cops because he didn't have time to shut it when getting into the car. Claude looking exhausted for running for too long. Claude flicking off people on the road for being impatient with him. Oh my gosh, the radio stations that are so in depth at a time where nothing like that ever existed within a game. Sure, if you compare them to newer GTAs, they're nothing, but there's no point in comparing an older game to its successors. That defeats the point of playing the game. Why would you play an older game just to compare it to its successors? That's so ridiculous. There's all these like minor details with the world too that are so cool. Like there's a black market gun shop right behind a police station, which this portrays the idea of how corrupt the police force is. They are so corrupt that they literally allow a gunshot to be located right behind their headquarters. If you come back to where you shot someone, they might even have tape on the ground to show that there's an investigation happening. And sure, all this happens within a minute, but once again, they didn't have to do this. In 2001, guys, like, come on, this is insane stuff. Like, this is incredible detail. The saving your car garage system, the store where you buy your weapons at, the garage where you can arm your car, the crusher that destroys your vehicles, the stores where you can respray your car and lose your wanted level. This all enhances that sense of a living world where you can just do anything. This real living city. And as I mentioned earlier, you're able to drive through the subway with your car and go from island to island, or you can just take the subway train. There's also the names of every street that pops up whenever you walk onto a new one. And then if you go into a bad street and there's a gang there, they might be driving in particular vehicles, or they own certain territories of the map and they'll attack you if you're not on their good side. Some people will take back their car once you've hijacked it too, which is another cool little detail. All the in-game cutscenes that tie everything together to make this world feel lived in, make this world feel real and immersive, because you're never being pulled out of it to see some pre-rendered crap. Instead, you get an in-game cutscene, and they are very impressive, especially that opening cinematic. Oh, I love that. All of this embodying Liberty City, the graffiti, the fake ads, the fake companies that would lay the groundwork for the real-world satire future that Grand Theft Auto games would encompass later on with entries like Grand Theft Auto 5. So many fucking minigames too. The Rampage minigames, which were based off the Killing Frenzy games from GTA 2. The races on the map, the Patriot Playground missions, the delivering vehicles to ports, the collectibles, the stunt jumps, the telephone side missions, which start off a little bit fetch questy, but actually get a lot of variety, with a great example being the one where you have to get an ice cream truck, arm it, and lure out some enemies, and then you detonate it when they get close to it. You're listening to me say all of these lists of activities and places that I keep saying emphasize the world of GTA 3. You keep on hearing me say that. Well, that's what I'm segueing to. The big portion of my review for Grand Theft Auto 3 is the world. You may think I have said everything I can about it, but oh boy, I love the Liberty City sandbox. The bare minimum for them was just the city. They made an entire world that has traffic patterns within a 3D environment that is so gross looking, but the good kind of gross. It's that style that they picked originally. It's like how Liberty City should be seen as a nasty city filled with drunks, criminals, and people who hate their lives.
Literally, the back of the box says, Liberty City is the worst place in America.
They have those vigilante missions where you can take down criminals, those paramedic missions where you can save injured people, those firefighter ones where you can set out fires, and the taxi missions where you get to play a little crazy taxi game, but you take out the part with crazy in it. This game's map is also huge for 2001. It's the first 3D game where you start off on one island and gain access to the other ones about halfway through the storyline. In the case of GTA 3, when you start working for the Yakuza and leave the Leone family, that's when you unlock Staten Island, and then you unlock Shoreside Vale with the airport. This would become popularized in video games later down the line, with nearly every open world title locking out parts of their map until you progress through the story. It had a ripple effect on everything in the open world genre after that. There is so many games that have that tactic. There's boats you can just drive around in, there's usable subway systems, the construction sites, the extremely rare invisible walls in the game, and we all know, by the way, how much I love it when a game does not have invisible walls. That's always a godsend. I do tend to get surprised that there's no swimming until GTA San Andreas, but it's not that bad until the most intense part of your entire story playthrough is doing a tiny 1-foot hop into a boat because you're afraid Claude is going to spring himself into the ocean. No joke, it's actually terrifying getting in and out of boats. Shit gives me a fucking anxiety attack. It's horrifying. I am not joking. I get more anxiety from jumping in and out of a boat than I do anything else in GTA 3. The way they introduce the story too with this kinetic opening cutscene is spectacular. It immediately hooks you into the game's main story with the Catalina portrayal, and even if the main story is not very compelling, that first cutscene is a home run. Look at how crazy the camera is moving all around. It's like a freaking Sam Raimi film. The story doesn't even have to stay compelling either, because I became so mesmerized by GTA 3's ability to introduce a new mechanic in every mission. Every mission out of like the 70-something missions, they would introduce a new mechanic. Legend of Zelda games from the 80s were some of the first to create the original way to format a game, which was that every area you went to would be designed to help you get used to a new piece of equipment. So if you ever play a Zelda game, think about that. When you get a new piece of equipment, remember that's the first series to introduce this idea of getting used to a piece of equipment in a new area that you are stuck in until you've mastered it. From the bow and arrows to the swords to the horse riding to the grapple shots and etc. You had to master this new gear before leaving the area. And I mention this because GTA 3 takes this philosophy, and what draws me in so much about it, it's because there's so much to do in the sandbox that even across 72 missions, almost every mission has the ability to introduce a tiny new gameplay mechanic and teach you how to master even the smallest thing, like knowing how to get your car resprayed, or learning how to snipe, or using the honk button to call NPCs to your car. It takes that original gameplay philosophy with mastering gear, but it applies every individual tiny part of their city, their world, and their gameplay mechanics to every mission. So once you've beat the game, you've mastered how to do almost everything in this city. This is a model that's been repeated in every GTA game since. I'm not joking. Play any GTA game and every mission will tell you a little tiny new world gameplay mechanic that you didn't know before, and it's actually very entertaining to keep track of. You'll notice it from the get-go, like you'll learn how to drive, you'll learn how to get your car resprayed, you'll learn how to use a computer in a cop car, you'll learn how to do this, and like you never have to teach yourself anything because the story progression, they'll show you a little tiny thing every single time. They'll show you a tiny little mechanic, and it actually gets so detailed to the point where you get to games like GTA 4 and they start telling you in a mission, oh, by the way, you can turn on your overhead lights by holding down X. And it's just kind of funny because they have so many small details that they will take a whole mission and they will only show you the tiniest detail of like holding down X to be able to turn on overhead lights. I genuinely think it's genius, because the reason why it's genius is because they introduce everything so slowly to you that it allows for the game to be so accessible to every gamer out there, which is a major reason for the franchise's success to begin with, the reason why it's as popular as it is. Most games will just be like, oh, you got in a car, okay, here's 20 controls revolving around that vehicle. GTA will be like, okay, here's how you brake and drive. We'll tell you some more stuff later on, okay? You're good, you're good. Just you know how to brake and drive, you'll be good for right now. That's what GTA does. Maybe the next mission, they'll have you do a drive-by, and now you learn how to do the drive-by mechanic. It's not like you get into a car and then they tell you, oh, here's your 30 controls, here's how you do everything. No, they span it out over the course of the game, and it makes everybody feel like they're being eased into the video game. It allows for a sense of progression, but also accessibility, because you never feel overwhelmed or intimidated by the world around you, because the world holds your hand. It holds your hand for the entirety of the game, even if it doesn't feel like it. And that's why I think it's genius, because you don't feel like your hand's being held, because the storyline is quite literally putting you into situations where you're having to learn a tiny little mechanic. And I know that I talked about Claude earlier, but I do want to mention I love Claude as a silent protagonist because of everything. He's the first protagonist and the only protagonist outside of Trevor in GTA history that his story doesn't feel interrupted when you decide to shoot up a group of pedestrians in between missions. He's silent, and therefore he is an avatar for the player to live out their deepest intrusive thoughts within a real living city. He doesn't elevate the story by any means, but I do believe if he did talk, he would only make the story worse, as all he would do would just be regurgitating his revenge plot and reminding players that he is a shallow one-dimensional character. Nowadays, people want a very well-written and beautiful story in any GTA game they play, but back then, back when this came out, the focus was rightfully on the sandbox. I wouldn't have it any other way. It was never dwelling on the boring cardboard cutout characters like the Leone family, Jimmy, Donald, Love, Catalina the villain, or Maria. There's a reason why when Claude shoots her and the game cuts to credits, you probably laughed out loud. It's because nobody cares about any of these actual characters.
Can you believe it? This one cost me $50.
These characters are not memorable. Claude is not necessarily memorable, but Liberty City is, even if a lot of the stuff that surrounds it is kind of hit or miss for me. This is going to be my complimentative side of the driving. Sometimes it works great, which is important because it is a huge chunk of the game. But other times, especially in intense chases, it's unreliable, flimsy, and I do believe I would think this in 2001. The cop chases in GTA 3 are a nightmare, but when you are going from point A to point B and you're just relaxing, it's a very reliable driving game because you are not in a stressful situation. The moment you are in a stressful situation though, the driving is awful. So either it's really solid or it's just freaking terrible. There's really no in between. It's either fine or awful. The lack of swimming is also just still very frustrating to me because it's not frustrating because they didn't add swimming really, but it's frustrating because they had time to animate Claude closing a door mid-driving or animate him flicking off pedestrians, but like you could have just refocused that on possibly just letting me swim and climb out of water and do an animation for that, so I'm not accidentally dying because of the occasional wonkiness of my character's jumping distance. Like I accidentally jump into water and therefore I just die. You could have also just made it something that just spawned on the nearest surface. Like I know that's not quote unquote realistic, but then just add like some dripping effect or something to my character. I don't know. You had time to do all these other minor details, and I feel like that should have just been slightly higher on your priority list. The checkpoint system would have traumatized me as a kid and would probably have stopped me from continuing the game because there is no checkpoints. And I just get furious when I'm having to do the same repetitive actions over and over again with no thought. It's just boring. It's not even that it's hard. I will say that it didn't bother me that much because the first time I ever played GTA 3 was the original GTA 3 and I was kind of expecting it to be like that. The ones that really got to me sometimes were the timed missions in particular that rely heavily on trial and error and you memorizing the map and where things are. And so you'd have to restart over and over until you know where everything's location is. And I just hated that because I just always had to restart, go back to the beginning, do the whole thing over again, memorize things locations, and just do it over and over until I knew where everything was and I could beat this ridiculous stupid timer. That and the grenade mission were probably the only times that the lack of a checkpoint system ever actually bothered me in the original game. I will defend 2 out outdated features though outside of Claude, and that is the map system and the aiming. They did not have a reliable method of maps in open world games at the time because this was the first big and true open world game. So using an actual physical map was honestly a really smart and immersive idea. Sure, you'd have to pause the game, and sure, they could have just included it in game. This was also before digital games. Everyone owned a physical copy, and therefore everyone had a map of the game who owned the game. I have a friend who played GTA 3 as a kid, and anybody who grew up with it, including him, probably knows the map to GTA 3 better than anybody knows the map to GTA 5 or 4 or Vice City or San Andreas. Those veteran players, they have that shit on lock. They know where everything is because they had to grow up looking at this map and memorizing every little detail of where these icons are, where these places are. The veterans who grew up with this game, bro, they know where everything is, and you cannot diss them for that. Those same players also probably have such a level of respect for a game that was willing to allow so much freedom in its sandbox, which is something that no other GTA has done since. Almost every newer entry after Grand Theft Auto 3 fills their story with scripted events, which this is not me trashing on newer GTAs. I love Rockstar storylines usually, but I am just pointing this out to show what makes GTA 3 stand out from all these other games in the franchise. It allows you to have the same level of freedom in its missions as it allows you to have in the open world, and no other GTA game has ever done that since. Think about how much freedom you have in GTA 5 outside of the storyline. Now think about what you have to do inside the storyline. It's all scripted events, it's all stuff where they tell you a very specific pathway on how to do everything, and you can't utilize the freedom of that world to your advantage within the storyline, which that's not me really dissing GTA 5, but that's me saying the difference between GTA 5 and GTA 3. GTA 3 lets you do that. My review for GTA 3 is so glowing because even with some of the crap that's in it or some of the frustrating bits, it's a game that has Liberty City filled to the brink with minor details that even video game companies to this day forget to put in their games. Plenty of games have your character run out of stamina, but don't even give you an animated indicator as to how your character feels, whereas GTA 3 has Claude run out of breath and look exhausted. This level of detail needs to be praised because it's something that games forget even in 2024, which is 23 years after this game came out. Sure, GTA 3 is outdated. I will admit it, but never say it's overrated with how much it has accomplished for the gaming industry, but also with every developer putting so much effort to go way above that bare minimum that I stated in the beginning. They could have gotten away with the bare minimum and still be viewed as the first open world game. They could have done it. This is the most I've ever hated a game that I love. I love Grand Theft Auto 3, I really do, but the moment I feel like I am in a groove with it, the game just slaps me in the fucking face with some weird outdated aspect of it or some complete BS, but I'm still in love with playing the original version of this game so much. And it's only gotten better with replays. I will admit it does get easier the more you play it. I also believe that if you disagree with me on the definitive edition, that's okay, but it's an important thing to note here that everyone has a version of GTA 3 that they can probably be satisfied with in today's age. Should everyone play GTA 3? Well, if some of the BS I mentioned or some of the difficulty that I mentioned earlier would ruin your experience, then I would not bother. But if you are the type of person who can look past these negativities fairly quickly, then I think you should. And what do I mean by everyone being satisfied in modern day with GTA 3? Well, not people who are just gonna hate the difficulty or not people who are just gonna not be able to stand some of the BS in the game. But what I'm saying is that you can buy the original version used, even if Rockstar did the shitty thing of delisting it from Steam. Or you could buy the console version of the definitive edition and probably have a grand old time playing it if you're new to the GTA 3D era. And if you are new or aren't new and some of the definitive edition equalities bother you, there is also that Netflix version that fixes up so many of those details, and therefore you can have fun on that version too. I only wish that there was a full-blown, full-screen monitor TV style version of that GTA because I just played it using the backbone. There's something for everyone here. There's a fixed version of the definitive edition, there's the original definitive edition, and there's the original that you can still buy used on the internet. There's something for everyone. And if you really want to, just go buy a used copy online because you don't want to give Rockstar a cent of money for deleting one of the most important video games ever created from history. It's ridiculous, but that's another rant for another time. Where does Rockstar go after GTA 3 though? Well, they go back to the drawing board with what city to choose for their next game. They look back at all 3 cities that premiered in GTA 1, Liberty City, San Andreas, and Vice City. Their next stop was Vice City to remodel in the 3D world. We are following this train of Rockstar games into our next Rockstar Retrospective, which will cover Grand Theft Auto Vice City, and then we're gonna do Max Payne 1 and 2. This is a time when Rockstar decided to become more story focused, make their series a time period piece by making Vice City set in the 80s, and creating their first ever fully acted speaking protagonist with Tommy Vercetti. All of this would be an evolution off of GTA 3 rather than a replication, because GTA 3 was the beginning of the 3D era of Grand Theft Auto, but it would not be the perfected 3D Grand Theft Auto game. It's okay if you love GTA 3. It's also okay if you don't like GTA 3, but it's very important to still respect and appreciate everything it did for gaming. It's not overrated, even if it's outdated. It's one of the most important video games ever created, even if it's not personally one of my favorite video games ever made. Do I think GTA 3 is still worth playing today? Because I said that it's not overrated, but it is outdated. Well, I do think it's still worth playing today, even if you play the definitive version or not. But that's not because of all of its hardships. It's not because you have to ignore all the crap that's outdated or whatever. It's because of Liberty City. Liberty City is what makes this one of the most influential titles to exist. It's the reason why I love the game to begin with. Grand Theft Auto 3 is Liberty City. Thank you for watching, appreciators. Comment below down what your favorite city is from a Grand Theft Auto game and give me all your reasons as to why. Subscribe, like, and if you did enjoy this video, please help me out with smashing the algorithm's head in with a baseball bat and jump on board the appreciation train to become a true appreciator, because you already know what we do on this channel. We are going to be appreciating every single little piece of art out there. And I'll see you there.